Liberals are unironically threatening that Pierre Poilievre is going to take away our rights. So Pierre Poilievre, who's the official opposition leader and who's calling to remove taxes and make Canada more affordable, et cetera, probably works for the globalists and isn't going to be any better than Liberals. But still, the Liberals themselves have already taken charter rights and really, really overtly and obviously taken charter rights. People are upset about it. And they're saying, that Pierre Poilievre, he's coming for your charter rights. So it's rich coming from them, and they're getting a lot of pushback on social media for their position. They trampled our charter rights with horses, and they're saying we're the protectors of your rights. No, they're not. Definitely not. Iran's leader was killed in an assassination yesterday, and that's interesting. We're going to start there today. I think it's impactful, and I think it'll have an impact on what happens next. We'll see. Vancouver player can't play Game 7 against Edmonton because of blood clots. So honestly, the Oilers and Vancouver Canucks are in the quarter conference finals going to the Stanley Cup game. The winner of this series goes to the Cup game. It's come down to Game 7, and one of the players on Vancouver can't play because of COVID blood clots. So weird. Not COVID blood clots, excuse me. COVID vaccine blood clots. Let's be specific and concise in our speech today, shall we? And Chantal Hebert, who is usually a Liberal talking head, says that Trudeau's in full panic mode, not once, but twice in the same interview. Twice, she says full panic mode, and using different examples for full panic mode. So is Justin Trudeau in full panic mode? I think that the globalists think they're well in control. The food systems are on the decline. Degrowth is happening across all of the G7 nations. All sorts of really, really concerning signs if you're a regular, everyday, normal guy. But if you're an elite G7 person who's running things, right, puppeteer in the background, and you're looking at all of these numbers, you think to yourself, great, right? Any day now, people will start, the deaths will increase. And it seems like depopulation is kind of the goal. It's very, very concerning. Anyway, we've got to start with Iran. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Global Press is reporting. Search teams confirm the Iranian president has died after finding his downed helicopter. So he flew into a foggy blizzard, I guess, and died during the helicopter crash. Weird stuff going on with that. And Angelo says, breaking huge helicopter carrying President Rishi in East Azerbaijan crashes. Rescuers in Iran are trying to reach the helicopter involved in an incident. They were calling it a hard landing until they had to admit that he was dead. While traveling with an entourage, including President Ibrahim Raisi, state television reported, sources AP and Iranian media. So this is being widely reported. Goldie says the Iranian terrorist, or the IRGC terrorist, Raisi, is dead. This is Ontario MPP. And she's an Iranian Canadian, and she's celebrating this. She says the butcher of Tehran had the blood of thousands of innocent Iranian people on his disgusting hands. Today is an amazing day for Iranians. Long live the freedom-loving people of Iran. Congrats on the death of this Islamo-fascist Nazi terrorist. That's just keyword stuffing now, really. I mean, come on. It's interesting that we've got Ontario MPPs who are invested that much in Iranian politics, right? Seems concerning to me. And holding that position. I mean, what party is she in? Hold on a second. Is she a conservative? It's interesting. Politician, yeah, conservative. So is this Ontario's official position? Is that strange to have somebody working in an MPP position who's making such strong statements on international stuff? Is that the government of Canada's position? Realistically, the conflict and the problems that Iran causes are problematic for the West, but Canada has relations with Iran. Financial relations. We take lots of people who come to Canada from Iran who live here. We have the IRGC terrorists who come here and run business from here. Right? Lots of close ties in Canada. Not to say that I want the Canadian government to be closely aligned with Iran. That's not it. I just think it's interesting that the MPP, who's representing the Conservative Party in provincial politics, is making an international statement so strongly, regardless of her Iranian roots. I just think it's weird. The Twitter diplomacy often ends in trouble, especially in Canada, because the messaging is muddy. What does the government of Canada mean? What does the government of Ontario mean? Is this just her statement, or is it a broader government statement? It gets muddy, and I don't like that. Okay. Atash says, breaking Tehran citizens celebrate Rassi's helicopter crash. A Tehran citizen in the video says, quote, I'm celebrating because of the good news of the Rashi helicopter crash. So they're thrilled, right? They can't get enough. They're setting off fireworks, right? Hold on, it'll play again. Fireworks. So that's what they're talking about in Iran. There we go. Weird stuff going on. Kareem says Rishi's death or Rashi's death would create a secession crisis in Iran. He and Mojtaba Khomeini are the only contenders to replace 85-year-old Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini, Mojobi's father. I'm getting his name terribly wrong. In Iran's conspiratorial political culture, few will believe Rashi's death was accidental. So, and Kareem says, yeah, this is responding to the rescue workers confirming that he's dead. And in the backdrop of all of this Israel, Iran, Middle Eastern kind of upheaval, Victoria Nuland is taking this opportunity to say, you know who we should attack? Russia. Let's start attacking Russian targets from the United States. That's what we need to do. Wall Street Silver says neocons pushing for direct war in Russia. These people will never be satisfied until they destroy everything. So yeah, this is what's going on. Lots and lots of war everywhere. Here's Victoria Nuland.
They need to be able to stop these Russian attacks that are coming from bases inside Russia. So I think there's also a question of whether we, the United States and our allies, ought to give them more help in hitting Russian bases, which heretofore we've not been willing to do. I think if the attacks are coming directly from over the line in Russia, that those bases ought to be fair game, whether they are where missiles are being launched from or where they are where troops are being supplied from. I think it's time for that because Russia has obviously escalated this war, including, as you said at the beginning, attacking Russia's second city, Kharkiv, which is not on the front lines, and trying to decimate it without ever having to put a boot on the ground. So I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
Right. So, yeah, that Iran thing, who knows? Things are up in the air, right? Now, was this guy, the Rashi, a U.S. asset? Probably not. He was like part of the succession plan. So was this all inter-Iranian conflict? Does this throw any kind of war plans between Israel and Iran into any kind of disarray? There are some people who think that there's going to be a potential for somebody who's more hardline or more pro-war to get the leadership of Iran now that this leader's out of the way, and could change the stalemate or the potential stalemate that Iran was in, just sitting there, kind of not doing much, except for the recent response to Israel regarding Israel killing an Iranian one of the high commanders. So like there was a little bit of movement, and then everybody kind of said, no, we're not doing that. And now Rashi's dead. So what does that do to the U.S. plans? Who knows? And is that why Victoria Nuland's coming in and saying, you know what we really need to do? Boots on the ground in Russia. That's what we need to do. Are these two things related, or is it completely separate? I don't know. I really don't know. It just seems odd to me. It's got one of those splinters in my brain. I thought, it's weird. Timing's weird, don't you think? So that's going on. Something big. Joe Warmington, let's talk about Canada. Let's talk about our reimagined history, our reimagined first Prime Minister. And Joe Warmington says, Bellevue House Visitor Center presents Sir John A. Macdonald as a drunk who built a country that excluded people and led a government to push to starve people. This is what they teach school kids who come here. Canada's first Prime Minister is painted more as a villain than a founder. And so you can scroll in and read all of this. It says, like many of the era, MacDonald was known to abuse alcohol and at times appeared in Parliament in a drunken state. He reformed his drinking in the mid-1870s, likely encouraged by his second wife, Susan Agnes Bernard. And then it goes on to say, his vision for Canada did not include everyone. Macdonald only advocated for wealthy women to vote, and under his leadership, Parliament imposed a head tax on Chinese immigrants to ensure they did not come to Canada in large numbers. Macdonald's government also created starvation policies to subdue and remove Indigenous people from the Great Plains and created the Indian residential school system. There's a lot of misinformation there. I think that the Indian residential school system was done by the Catholic Church, was it not? I don't think the government of Canada had anything to do with it until after the 1900s anyway. And for wealthy women, the whole point of voting, at some point in time, men didn't get the vote either. You had to be a property owner. You had to actually own land in order to have a vote. So the whole idea of like, oh, it didn't include everyone, if you're creating a system, if you're creating like, okay, we've all got a stake in this, and so we're going to make sure it doesn't get crappy, right? You make it so people who are having a say in it have a stake in it, like property, right? So if you own land, you get a vote. If you don't own land, sorry, buddy, you don't get a vote, right? We're the landowners. We're the ones who have to live with the laws that we create. We're not going anywhere because we've got a stake in this place, the land that we own. We're voting. And then realistically, during suffrage, during the women's demanding to vote in the early 1900s, there was a lot of controversy about it. A lot of women had the assumption that their vote was counted in their household vote with their husband's vote of landowners, right? Like the husband was voting on behalf of the family. So it's such a misrepresentation of history that I don't think I'd let this stand. I can't believe that the leadership of Parks Canada is letting this garbage stand, right? Head tax on Chinese immigrants to ensure they did not come to Canada in large numbers. That's negative? Why is that negative? Doesn't the politics of the day come into play? Doesn't the sense of the day and what people believed and et cetera, about immigration and all the rest, doesn't that come into play? No, they're just going to put it through the lens of the modern era? Incorrect. I think it's terrible. So these people are not our friends. It's a cultural revolution, and they're trying to get rid of our history in order to be in control of the future. It's like if you're writing a Star Trek series and you want to make a new Star Trek series, you can't do it in the Alpha Quadrant. So because of all sorts of history, like certain races are at war with each other, and if you end that war, that's going to be problematic for maybe other stories other people are telling in the universe and so on and so forth. So you're bound by all these rules. So get rid of all those rules and put them in the Delta Quadrant, or make it 100 years in the past or 100 years in the future or whatever it is, right? Do anything but in the modern era, in the current era of Star Trek, and then you're free to do whatever, right? And this is kind of what Mao's Cultural Revolution does. Like, get rid of those old ideas, and now we're going to move on to the new ideas. And the new ideas are, your stuff is my stuff, communism is good, not bad, and free speech is bad, not good, right? Like, that's all they're doing. That's all they're doing. And it's working? How is it working? Here is Andrew. He says, Maoist Cultural Revolution with Parks Canada, a willing participant. Note to Pierre Poilievre and all sorts of these people, Mr. Pincher should be high on the list of people to remove. Yeah, so here's this speech. I hope it's loud enough. I'll turn it up as we go. If it's not, it's not.
And one of the things that we're trying to accomplish here at Parks Canada is to bring those perspectives to the fore and let visitors really connect with these places the way that they would like to connect with them. As you've heard from today's speakers, his prime ministership has left deep harms that continue to be felt over 150 years later. For Bellevue House here today, this is the beginning of a journey for us, one that we will continue to evolve as we engage in more conversation about the past.
Radical communists like him should not be given the floor or the control of former prime ministers' houses to reimagine history the way they're reimagining history. Post-national delusions at the reopening of Sir John A. Macdonald's Bellevue House Saturday, historian Shannon O talked of Canada's past being steeped in racism and white supremacy. Bye. Not interested. They're also removing monuments. We talked about this, but here's Joe Warmington's write-up of the monument that was removed in St. Catharines, the 139-year-old memorial of the soldier taken away because he's colonial and they want to remove our history so they can rewrite the future. Carmaya says, this gem came from a Freedom of Information request about the RCMP's research on Diagolon. So not only are they reimagining history, they're changing laws and rules in order to reimagine the current real life situation to make people into terrorists if they want to, which is crazy. Quote, here's the quote from the Freedom of Information. Due to the fact that all information traces back to one source, that's antihate.ca, triangulation and the verification of facts is almost impossible at the current time. Based on the information that's publicly available, it's difficult to understand how the Canadian Anti-Hate Network can confidently assert that Diagolon is an accelerationist movement that believes a revolution is inevitable and necessary to collapse the current government system. So pretty wild. The RCMP is taking anti-hate's word for it and actioning that. That's incredible. Incredible. Michelle Ferrier. So we'll talk about the charter and Canada's. It used to be that you had basic rights in Canada, and then now you don't have basic rights in Canada because the Liberal government just can unilaterally, without charges or a conviction, they can steal people's bank accounts, remove and lock people's bank accounts, freeze people's bank accounts, and not give them access to their money. Paul Bernardo didn't do that. They didn't do that to Paul Bernardo, right? Like, they put him in prison, but I think that if you have a bank account, they leave that be. Puff Daddy, all of these people who work with these horrific traffickers, Epstein traffickers and all the rest of it, their bank accounts are just fine, right? But if you wave a Canadian flag and you're a trucker and Justin Trudeau hates you, your charter rights don't matter. Your right to be charged with a crime before having any kind of punishment doled out didn't matter. They did that over top of your over top of the laws that govern what they're supposed to do. They did that anyway. They've flooded our country with people against good sense and any kind of consent they had. And yet they're accusing Pierre Poilievre of going after charter rights. And it's Karina Gould, and I can't stand Karina Gould, so we're not going to actually listen to her. But she put out a tweet that says, when someone tells you that they will start taking your rights away, believe them. And when that someone is Mr. Poilievre, remember that he's done it before. This long weekend, tell him the charter belongs to Canadians and to keep his hands off our rights and freedoms. And Michelle Fernier, and she's an MP, she's the shadow minister for families and children and social development. So she's a high-placed conservative. She says, sorry, who invoked the Emergencies Act and froze Canadians' bank accounts? And invoking the Emergencies Act was illegal anyway. What they did was illegal. Putting the charter in a paper shredder, basically. Who took away people's rights to work because they were unvaccinated? This is so desperate. You know the Liberals are losing badly when they bring up abortion. So yeah, the charter right that she's saying that Pierre Poilievre is coming after is the right to kill babies. So it's an interesting flex. All of the NDP are in on it too, right? Abortion is murder, fundamentally. And for some reason in Canada, we're not allowed to talk about that. Nobody likes talking about that. But in 1987, the Morgan Teller decision said that a woman's right to pursue her life, basically, could not be encumbered for any reason, including being pregnant. If the woman was pregnant and she didn't want to be pregnant, she was allowed to, under Charter Right 7, I think it is 7, she was allowed to abort her baby. But the Supreme Court said the government of Canada should come up with different language that ties that all off and, you know, protects the woman's right to achievement and to, you know, be all she can be and all that, as well as balancing the rights of the baby. And the government has never done that. The government has never done that. They were tasked to do that in 1987, but they never did it. And it's become toxic since then. And toxic to the point of people saying, you know, women's health care and, you know, what's it called? All sorts of language to walk us away from the idea that what we're doing is ending a life, right? It's making sure that the woman women's health care is accessible, and how dare a woman's right to choose be challenged, and all of this language to sanitize the actual act or to sanitize the fact that there is a life ending in this process, and nobody seems to want to talk about that. They only want to talk about the one side of things, women's right to choose and your charter rights and blah, blah, blah. The baby's right doesn't come into it at all. And I noticed that Karina Gould has no comments on, and I said, when an elected official turns off comments on everything they post, that alone is the message. Nothing that they say matters after that. That's the message. They don't care what you think. They're not interested in listening to you. This is a one-way communication. She's not interested in hearing from her constituents. And ratioed 2.4 thousand likes and 2.5 thousand quote tweets, right? So people are not having what she's selling. People are not believing Karina Gould with this. Anita Anand, oh, hold on, I think I've skipped something here. L says, how delusional are the libs? Trudeau took away my rights to choose. Trudeau took my job when I failed to comply. Trudeau made me unwelcome in society with his fear-mongering and vax pass. Your entire Liberal Party is garbage, including you, Karina Gould. Garbage. Absolute garbage. Anita Anand is quote tweeting Karina Gould, and she says, well said, Karina Gould. The rights and freedoms of Canadians that are enshrined in the Charter are non-negotiable. And Lion Advocacy says, your post is demonstrably false. You've been negotiating charter rights for quite a while, not just with the unlawful invocation of the Emergencies Act, but also with the COVID-19 jab mandates for soldiers. These are rights that were thrown out by Anita Anand and the rest of the Liberal Party. Lion Advocacy says, this post is so inaccurate and misleading. In my humble opinion, it borders on a level of nefarious malfeasance unprecedented in Canadian history. They know perfectly well, they being the Liberal Party, know perfectly well that they've been strategically trading off charter and constitutional rights, testing the limits of what they can negotiate. Yeah, accurate, 100% accurate. Sam says, the UK has a rule of law crisis. So fundamentally, the Liberal Party is trying to rewrite modern history and say, be fearful of Pierre Poilievre. He's going to take away your rights. And meanwhile, the Liberal Party is cracking down on people who say things that the Liberal Party doesn't like on the internet, but isn't illegal. But at the same time, they are allowing criminals to hold daily rallies, pro-Palestinian rallies, anything to burn, people who want to tear down statues, people who want to block streets for climate change or for Palestine or for Ukraine, right? They want to encourage all of that to disrupt our society. But if you want to wave a Canadian flag and say, Justin Trudeau, you're not representing what we want in a government, and these are the things that we want in our Canadian government, and this is what it says in our documentation, then you're going to get labeled a terrorist. And that's wrong. That's wrong. And the same thing's going on in the United Kingdom. Sam says, the United Kingdom has a rule of law crisis. Police are failing to enforce the law. Official statistics are increasingly unreliable. The state's desire to create new rules is increasing, as is its ability to enforce those rules declines. A short thread of examples of British rule of law, of the British rule of law crisis. Sam continues, Met Police stop action against fare evasion in May 2024. Since the incident happened, we've stopped our involvement in supporting Transport for London fare evasion operations, but we continue our presence on the bus networks tackling violent crime. So if you want to just get onto the subway or wherever, then you can. But if you're violent on the subway, then the police will interact with you and stop you. Isn't that wild? Like, that's not rule of law. Rule of law is you're 18 to, whatever age you pass away. You're an adult. You're treated the same under this structure of laws that we've all agreed upon, that society relies upon, right? And now that's being thrown in the trash because other cultures are in our society and they don't have the same laws. And so our laws don't mean anything anymore, I guess. Weird. Sam says, Met Police attend less than half of the shoplifting reports. Data shows that the percentage of shoplifting reports attended by police since April 23 has improved to 44%. That rate has not been above 50% since at least 2018, the data shows. So they don't even bother to go to shoplifting calls. People are allowed to just shoplift in the United Kingdom all of a sudden. Met Police fails to solve 82% of burglaries, an average of 129 burglaries a day, or a total of 47,000 50 were closed without a suspect being identified. Just 6% of cases resulted in a suspect being charged or summoned. That's 2023 number, or I guess that'd be before 23, so 22 numbers. So that's pretty wild. 90% of English bike theft goes unsolved. So that's wild. Knife crime, repeat offenders avoid jail time. That's April of this year. Police failed to solve any burglaries at all in half the country. That's March 24. Police failed to attend 70% of car theft, April 24. Police failed to solve 90% of all crime. That's August 23. So they're not even trying, because if they were trying, they'd have a better success rate than that. What are we paying for police for if they're not going to try and solve crime? Moving on, we have to talk about DARPA. And recently I spoke about how Google was functionally DARPA, and Google Maps specifically was technology built through the US government, and Google search, and basically the piece was the whole internet was built for digital ID. Basically, that's what I was saying, through US military funding, shopped through public companies like Google. COVID's the same. DARPA created it. It's a U.S. military thing, shopped through Pfizer and BioNTech, or Pfizer and Moderna, and similar other front companies across the rest of the world. Do you see? I'll show you. Antonio says, this is from December 2022. Okay, DARPA unclassified documents confirmed SARS-CoV-2 was created by EcoHealth Alliance at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, coordinated by Peter Danisk. It was designed to be deliberately virulent and humanized, resulting in 6.5 million deaths. Fauci was involved. Okay, and so they say that this is what's going on. Here we go.
We, the people, are dying in massive numbers. 6.5 million. 6.5 million globally. That's criminal charges. Did Anthony Fauci lie about gain of function work? Absolutely, in my opinion, he did. And how about criminal charges? We're gonna go after Bannon for contempt because he didn't bother to show up to a farce hearing. But we're gonna let Fauci lie to Congress about something that is consequential enough to result in 6 million deaths?
So there you go. That's one. This is fast forward to April 2024. So recently. U.S. military, not Pfizer, was the origin of mRNA vaccines. DARPA invested in gene-encoded vaccines since 2012 to pursue a bioweapon and a vaccine. And so this is 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes on that. I'm not going to watch that. Link is in the description if you're interested. So DARPA creates the technology and hands it to a private company. The private company then makes oodles of money and buys off the politicians. DARPA makes a company rich. The company buys off the politicians for U.S. military goals. That's the purpose. Here's Russell Brand talking about how much money Pfizer and Moderna made. Okay, but it's not Pfizer and Moderna. They're just stand-ins for DARPA. Okay.
Well,
yes.
Out of respect for you and your show, I've brought some facts. Would you? If you like, they're actually...
You just get the fuck out of here. This is not the place.
I thought you'd like facts.
We love facts. I love facts.
I wouldn't have mentioned it. I'm English, and you know that politeness is our fundamental religion.
Yeah.
But they do pertain to this issue, so may I say some of them? If they inconvenience you, I'll stop saying them. The pandemic created at least 40 new big pharma billionaires. Pharmaceutical corporations like Moderna and Pfizer made $1,000 of profit every second from the COVID-19 vaccine. More than two-thirds of Congress received campaign funding from pharmaceutical companies in the 2020 election. Pfizer chairman Albert Bourla told Time magazine in July 2020 that his company was developing a COVID vaccine for the good of humanity, not for money. And of course, Pfizer made $100 billion in profit in 2022. And may I just mention, finally, and this is also a fact, that you, the American public, funded the development of that. The German public funded the BioNTech vaccine. When it came to the profits, they took the profits. When it came to the funding, you paid for the funding. All I'm querying is this.
Yes.
Is if you have an economic system in which pharmaceutical companies benefit hugely from medical emergencies, where a military-industrial complex benefits from war, where energy companies benefit from energy crises, you are going to generate states of perpetual crisis, where the interests of ordinary people separate from the interests of the elite.
Yes. Welcome to 2024. That's exactly what's going on. You understand? Here is This is from May 17th. This might be the most succinct breakdown of Pfizer and AstraZeneca capture of Britain. So this is where the company takes the money, Pfizer, BioNTech, or Pfizer, AstraZeneca, whoever it is, takes the money and buys the politicians, okay, on behalf of DARPA to move forward the U.S. government goals. And I mean, maybe the Crown's goals, maybe it's the British government's goals, maybe it's the Canadian government's goals as well. But fundamentally, this was put together by U.S. military against the U.S. citizens.
We recommend such a thing. Well, here's your answer. Between 2020 to 2023, the UK HSA accepted around £500,000 from Big Pharma, a lot of it from Pfizer. And here's the University College London Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust, which took over £1 million from Big Pharma over the COVID years, and notably from Pfizer and AstraZeneca. And what of the NHS itself? You know, delving into the database revealed an absolute horror show of corruption. Here are the 3 opening pages of named doctors involved in consultancy work for Big Pharma. And here's a page of Abduls. Now let's take a random Abdul and see what comes up. I'll pick Abdul Jahangir, top right. There you go, close to £4,000 from AstraZeneca. I could go on. There are hundreds of these pages and thousands of doctors' names, and finding one without Pfizer or AstraZeneca payments is no mean achievement. The corruption is off the scale. Now, why doesn't Britain's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, or MHRA, do something about this corruption, you might ask? And the answer is because the MHRA received over £13 million from Bill Gates over the last few years.
I mean, jeepers creepers, you don't buy up the police and not the police station. Come on. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful